What's going on, guys? So now that we have this login form that users can fill out and their login credentials are being sent over to our backend, let's start authenticating them. So to authenticate them, I'm going to use PostgreSQL. And so let's add to our package PG, and this is going to let us connect PostgreSQL to Node.js. And let's also install bcrypt. This is going to help us hash user passwords, and it's also going to automatically add a unique salt to each hashed password. Basically, if you don't know, salt is like we get the hashed passwords and bcrypt just adds random letters to their password to then randomize the hash even more. And that helps us because then attackers can't have hashed passwords that they hashed by themselves previously, and so it would take them a lot longer to hack into users' accounts if our database were to get leaked. So let's add those packages. Okay, once we got that, I'm actually going to create the database, and I'm just going to call this WhatsApp. And I'm going to connect to the database using PSQL and the -d command to connect to the WhatsApp database. So now that I'm here, let me actually create a file here called database.sql, and I'm just gonna write some SQL in here so I can have the syntax highlighting in here, and then I'll just copy them over into the terminal. So I'm just gonna run create table users, and it's gonna have some columns in here, so we're gonna open it up like that, and I'm gonna have the columns, one called ID, and it will be serial primary key. So basically serial means the database is gonna update the new primary key every time. So when we get a new user, it'll be ID of 1, the next one will be ID of 2, and the one after an ID of 3, and we don't have to specify that, it'll do it automatically. And we're just going to specify that this is the primary key, so the primary way of identifying our users. So we also want another column called username, and we're going to set this to be a varchar, and the maximum length for usernames was 28. And then we want to set this to not null and unique. So basically to make an account here, you need a username, and it has to be a unique username. It can't be, two users cannot have the same username. And you also want to add a column called pass hash, which I'm calling that, but it stands for password hashed. So our hashed password will be stored here, and it's just going to be a varchar and not null, like so. All right, so we can copy this over into the terminal. I think I accidentally deleted it. Okay, we can copy this over, and that's our table. And I'm just gonna have the insert command here, so for later, so it'll be when we create a new user, it'll be insert into users, into the username and pass hash column, the values, and then it would be the values like $1, $2, which represents the when we plug in those values later on. So okay, now we have that. Let's create a file in here called db.js, and here basically we're just going to connect up PG, which is the package to connect PostgreSQL to Node.js. So we're going to want to create a new pool. So first of all, we want to import that. So import pool from PG, and then run const pool equals new pool, and it takes in an object as parameters, and we do module dot exports equals pool, like so. And then here it's going to expect a bunch of things like the database name, so that we can just set that to an environment variable. And since we don't want to just put clear text here, so let's say like we're posting this code to GitHub, we don't want people on GitHub to be able to see our credentials to log into our database. So we're just going to go in here, and we're gonna add .env to our package, and that's gonna let us use environment variables. Basically, we can hide our credentials. So let's create a file here called .env, and this is where our environment variables will live. So in order to load our environment variables, we run require .env and we run .config, and that automatically runs it for us. So here it would be process.env database name, and then we need a host, which will be process.env database host. Then we need a password, which is process.env database password. And then we need a user, so process.env database user. And I think that's it. Oh, and a port, so process.env database port, just like that. I'm pretty sure that's all we need. Yeah, that's all we need. So then in our environment variables, we would specify all these things. So we would want to make our database name is equal to WhatsApp, database host is equal to localhost, database user is equal to Lester. This would be whatever user you have in PostgreSQL, and you can check that by doing this, and then you find your database. So this one's WhatsApp right here, and then the user owner, basically the owner, and for me it's Lester, so whatever's there would be the user. Database password, my password is Postgres, so whatever your password is. If you don't have a password, you can go in here and run /password and set a password. And then database underscore port is equal to 5432, which is the default port for PostgreSQL. All right, cool. So now that we have our pool, we can start making queries to our database with that. So let me just check that everything's, yeah, no crashing. So that means everything's working perfect. And so over here in our auth router, we want to start letting users sign up to our application. So here we're validating their form. And instead of sending back a request, we want to not do that. So instead of having it in this form where we're calling it like a function, we want to stick it as a middleware. So then, because basically if we just run it like this and we keep it here, then well, actually we can do that. Yeah, we can just get rid of this right here. And then it'll just return from this function and it'll continue. So yeah, we can just keep it like this. It's not a problem. Okay. So we want to import our pool from our db.js file. Like so. And I'm pretty sure it's a directory higher than that. Like that. Okay. And also we want to import bcrypt because we're going to start encrypting user passwords. So bcrypt equals require bcrypt, just like that. Okay. And so when they're signing up, there's a couple of things we want to do. So the first thing we want to do is we want to check if they're trying to sign up, but someone already has that username. Okay, so we're going to want to run, first let's make this an async function. So we're gonna run make a variable called existing user equals await pool dot query, and then we run select username from users, and we called it users. Yeah, users where username is equal to $1, and then we plug in the username from request.body. username, like so. And yeah, it's coming from request.body, so just like that. And then we want to check down here. So here we got a query, and if the query ends up with 0 rows, that means they're good to go. No one has that username. So we want to check if existing users dot row count is equal to 0, register. Else we just want to do res.json logged in false and status. So we want to send back a status code, which we'll configure later. So then we show like a username taken on the login page, so, or the register page. So the status code here would be username taken, just like that. And so here we would register our user. And so first we want to encrypt the password. So we want to do const hashed pass is equal to await bcrypt.hash, and then here we stick in request.body.password, and we specify 10. So 10 is basically like the salt round. So the good thing about bcrypt is that you can specify how long it takes to hash this, and this is for security reasons. So let's say someone got your database and they got your passwords. It would take them however long this time is to hash the same password. So this basically helps you make it so that you can deter attackers even further by making it take a longer time to hash your passwords so they can hash the same password. So here we got their hashed password, so we're just going to want to make const new user query is equal to await pool.query, and then here we would run insert into users. We specify the columns, so the columns that we're inserting to is username and pass hash, the values which are equal to $1 and $2, and then here we pass in request.body.username and then our hashed password. And then we want to do returning username, like so. So then in our new user query, we get our username back. So then we can do res.json logged in is true, and username, pass that in there. Okay. And another thing we want to do, right now we're registering our users in PostgreSQL, so saving their account, but we also want to use sessions. So basically we want to set a cookie on the browser so that when the user refreshes the page, they're still logged in, so they don't have to log in again. So to do that, we're gonna go over here and add express session to our package. Then we can run our server again. And so we're gonna go over to our index.js, and over here we're gonna import, so const session is equal to require express session, and then here we do app.use session, and then it takes in an object and we pass it in a secret, and the secret is basically like so the cookie on the browser is going to be a code, and with that code, when the user sends a request to our server, express session detects that there's a code in a cookie, and it gets the user's information from that code. And we want that code to be randomized, so when you pass in the secret, it's basically like the seed of the randomization of that code. So that's something we want to keep a secret, and we're going to store in this .env file. So we just want to run that .env config command to load environment variables into this file. And over here we can do secret is process.env.cookie secret credentials. Pretty sure this is true. And the name, so the name of the cookie on the browser will be SID, stands for session ID. Resave false, so it says it here, so basically it doesn't save the session for no reason. It only saves it if something changes. We don't want to do extra work on our server if we don't have to. And save uninitialized needs to be false, so we don't want to set a cookie on the browser if the user hasn't logged in, and that's why we need to set this to false, because if it's true it would give them a cookie no matter what, and that's not what we're trying to do. And let's go into the cookie settings. So cookie is an object, and we can set settings here. So here we want to say secure is equal to process.env.environment. Did I spell that right? Environment. Pretty sure I'm not spelling that right. Okay. Is equal to production. So secure means that this cookie is only sent through HTTPS. And obviously while we're in development, we're on HTTP. So we want to make sure that we can still run this code and it still sets a cookie while we're in development. So that's why we're doing that. And then we want to make sure that we set HTTP only to true. And then we set same site to the same thing up here. And then we do a ternary operator. So basically same site means like, will this cookie be communicated between different domains or not? So if its same site is set to true, it will not be communicated through different domains. It'll only be communicated between the same domain. So yeah, we actually definitely want this to be, it takes in a string and it's none. But the problem is that when you have it set to none, it's required that secure is true. So we actually do want to check. We want to check if we're in production. And if we're in production, we can set this to none. And if we're in development, we can set this to lax, like so. All right, perfect. And now we just want to set the cookie secret over here. Is equal to some random letters there, like so. All right, so now we're ready. I'm pretty sure this environment thing is supposed to be in all caps. And yeah, I know I'm probably misspelling this. I'm really not sure. So now that we have the cookies being set, we can go in here and basically express session. It gives us an object in the request object called request.session, and this holds all the session information. So basically, like we set this cookie in the browser, and that cookie is basically the key to a dictionary, and the value of the dictionary is whatever's in here. And whenever we set something in here, so let's say .user is equal to that, it gets saved in that dictionary, and then express session saves that dictionary every time we send a response. So right before we send a response, express session hooks into that event, and it makes sure to save our session in case we edited anything inside of it. So whenever we edit something in here, it's gonna stay. The next time the request is made, it's still gonna be there because it's in our server's memory. Okay. So basically we want to save their user in the session. So we'll do request session.user is equal to an object, and we pass in the username. And what else do we need? Oh, we can pass in their ID. So over here we want to return their ID. So this would be new user query dot rows, and the first column, the first row from the query dot ID, like so. And yeah, that's pretty good. And so that's registering our user. So now what about when they log in? So the first thing we want to do when they log in is check if there is a user with that password and username. So we're going to want to do const potential login equals await pool.query is equal to select from users. So we want to select from the users table the username, like so. Select username from users, and yeah, let's also get their ID because that's what we're saving in the session. So we're getting their ID and their username, where, and let's alias users to u, so I can just write u. So u.username is equal to $1 and u.pass hash is equal to $2. And here we pass in request.body.username, and then we're gonna want to hash the password, and not just hash the password, but we're gonna want to actually run bcrypt dot, so bcrypt dot compare, and this will compare request.body.password and our hashed password, which we're gonna have to get from the database. So we're gonna do const, I can just do this and get the user's password, ID, password, and username. So I grabbed the not password, we named it pass hash. So I get the pass hash from the user that has the username that the user is trying to log in with, and then we compare that. So we want to compare their password that they gave us with the password in the database. So that would be potential login dot rows dot pass hash const is same pass is equal to await, like so. So yeah, it returns us either true or false. So I'm doing this correctly. And so if is same pass login, and else not good login. So then we would respond if the password's wrong and bcrypt compared the password they gave us with the password. Oh, but we also want to check if the username is valid too. Yeah, I completely forgot about that. So okay, so first we want to check if the username is actually valid. So if potential login dot row count is equal to 0, actually if the row count is greater than 0, then we found a user, else it's not a good login. So then if we found a username, an account with the username that they typed in, then we compare the password. But if there's no account, then there's no point in even bothering with that. Okay, so here that means the username was wrong, so we would send response.json logged in false and a status of wrong username or password. We don't want to tell the user that they got the username or password wrong, because then they'll, like, if someone's trying to attack or brute force our website, they'll know, okay, I'll just change the username, or I'll change the password because someone has this password or someone has this username. So we don't really want to be too specific here. Okay, so once we're here in this code, that means there is an account with this username. So we compare the passwords, and here we can do the same thing. So if the password was wrong, we do the same thing. And here, that means the password and username matched someone. So we can log them in, and I'm gonna do kind of the same thing I did here of logging them in. So I'm storing, there's a session, I'm storing an object called user in the session, and it has their username and their ID. And I'm just sending back an object with their username, and it says logged in is true. And where am I getting username from here? Nowhere. Yeah, I want to make sure that I specify it's request.body.username. So let me make sure that that's valid. Okay. All right, so I think it's ready to try out. Hopefully we get it right on the first try. Oh, there's a bug here. Okay, I forgot to make this an asynchronous function, and everything seems to be working fine. Let me connect over to my WhatsApp database and run select all from users. So we have no users right now, but first let's try to log in. And when we get an error, I actually want to, so in the login, if there's no user with that, I just want to console log not good, just for right now as we're testing. Okay, like that. So we'll get it'll say not good here if this happens. Okay, so let me try to log in. Lester pass. Okay, so as you can see, we didn't log in. No user was created, so that's good. And I need to change this here because it's clear text, and that's not right. So let me just quickly go in here to my login component, and over here I'll put type equals password. Okay, just like that. Okay, so our login is fine. So now let's try to create an account, and I'll do Lester, and I need to do the same thing here too. I don't know why I forgot to do that. Let me make sure I specify here type is password, and there we go. So let me try to create an account. There were no errors. Let me check my database. There's no user there. That's weird. Okay, let me try it again. So Lester pass. Okay, something's wrong here. So here we're selecting username from users, and we're checking the row count. Is it if there's no user with that username, we sign them up. Okay, so first of all, here this should be request.body.username. And okay, what's happening here? So we're running a query, insert into users, in the username and pass hash the values that. Let me just console log here. New user query. Let me console log this query when an account is created. So my password would be hello world, and it's not console logging. So we're not even getting to this point. Okay. So something must be wrong over here. So let me console log existing user. It's not even console logging. Wait a second, this is /signup, and over here the request is going to /register. Okay, so we're not even properly running this code at all. And I'm sorry about that noise. It's really loud outside. Okay. So over here, let's try again. And we're gonna make an account called Lester, and this is my password. This is /signup, right? And over here it's, okay, I didn't even change it. Okay, my bad. So here, let me try again. Perfect. So, okay, and let's check our database. And there I am. There's my user account. And let me check over here in the cookies of the browser. I can get rid of this. And it's not setting a cookie at all. Okay, so maybe that credentials thing doesn't even exist. I'm not sure. See secure. If we're in production is true, if not is false. Okay, let's try something else. So if we're in production, it's true. If not, it's auto. So maybe that's the reason no cookies being sent. Auto is the default option, so. Okay, now let's try to log in. So we log in with my username. And we got a crash. Over here, so new user query, I copied it from here, and that thing, new user query doesn't exist. So that was my bad for not paying attention there. So it's potential login .rows.id, and yeah. Okay, so let me try to log in again. And I forgot to change that. So where is this? Okay, here. It's request.body.username. So let me try one more time. So it's not printing out not good. That means we're being logged in. Let me check the cookies over here. Okay, there's our cookie right here. And so let me go over here to this route. And let me print out our session. So it'll be request.body.session.user. So that's where we're storing our user information of our session. So when I log in, okay, something's wrong. Oh, it's not .body, it's just .session. So, okay. Right. So let me do it again. Okay, so there's our user. So the first time we logged in, it was set in the session. And as you can see on our second request, it was already there. Before we did anything, I'm printing out the session. So we're still logged in. So now we got our user logged in using the cookie on the browser, which is over here. And that's really cool. So now when they log in, we want to get them out of this screen over here. And I'm just gonna, yeah, so this code works. Everything works fine. Okay, so let's go over to our front end. Over here. Right. And so So we've been responding with this JSON when they log in. And I'm not sure why it hasn't been printing here. Are we printing it here? Or it prints over here in this console here. Okay, yeah, it is printing here. Perfect. So we're getting back our response. So once we get our response, we want to navigate our user to /home. And we're gonna do the same thing over here. Like so. And then we want to make a component called /home, and that will be a route in our application. So we go over here to views and make a route called a route that matches with the path /home. And then for now, we'll just render a text element from Chalker UI, and it'll say, "Hi, welcome home." So let's log in, and we're taken to our home page. But the thing is that we can just type over here in the browser /home, and we're also taken there. So if you saw one of my last videos, you know where I'm going with this. Let's create a protected route in React. So to make sure that we don't let users go in here unless they're authenticated. So let's go here into our login. No, we could just store it here in the top level. So it'll be private routes.jsx, and we're gonna make a hook called use auth, and just gonna make a dummy object, and logged in is false, and then we return user is not null, and then user dot logged in is true. And then here we make the component private routes, and is auth is equal to use auth, and then return and we do ternary operator on is auth. So if we're authenticated, so is auth is true, we return the outlet component, and if it's not, we return the navigate component. Navigate from React router, and that will navigate them back to the home page. And then we just do export default private routes, like so. And then over here in our views, we wrap our home in a route, and then the element is private routes, and we make sure the star thing goes under, like so. Okay, so now when we go to /home, it's bringing us back to the login page because this is false. Now we want to actually you see how over here we're getting a response, and it's like an object, like over here in the console it was printing out, and then we were sending back logged in is true from our backend. Like right here, we're sending back logged in is true. We're gonna save that on our front end. We're gonna actually save that somewhere instead of here. So let's create a component called account context, and we're gonna use the React context API to save this login information. So we're just gonna do const account context is equal to create context, and we're going to do const user context is equal to a component, and that component takes in props and takes in the children prop automatically. And this is basically any child of this component will be passed into here automatically by React. So then here we're going to have a state. So we're going to do const user and set user is equal to use state. Hate it when that happens. Use state from React, and this is going to default to logged in as null. So we're gonna default logged into null. And then we're gonna return from this component, it'll return the account context with the children rendering under it. And we do dot provider, and then the value that we're gonna save in our context is gonna be an object with our user and set user like so. So now when we set our user, we can set our user to true from anywhere in our application. So let's go to our app.js and wrap our application in our context. And let me make this the default export. So export default user context. Context, if you don't know, is basically a way to have state in a parent, and it's passed down to any component that wants to listen to it. Like, you don't have to explicitly pass it down to the components under it. You can use a hook, use the use context hook, and listen to this context. So over here in our app.js, you just want to import that. I guess I'll just import it myself. So yeah, now we can use the context, so we can access this state, this object, from anywhere in our application. So when we log in here, we want to set our user. So we want to access that context. So we would do const set user is equal to use context, and that would be the account context, and we would have to export that. So let's make sure that we export that. So to use this context, you want to use the context that you created, not the component, the context that you created to access the value. So here we would I guess it doesn't want to automatically import for me. That's okay. I have to make sure that's an object. From, I go up a level, count context like so. And then we do over here, set user to an object, and we destructure our data like so. And we can do the same thing when we log in, and we're gonna want to do this right here, also in our login page. And we need those imports. Like so. And we have this here twice. Okay. So now that we're saving our users when we log in, we're saving the object that has login set to true. Over here in the private routes, instead of doing this, we can do const user is equal to use context account context. And because this is a child of our app, we can do this. So yeah, it's basically the same exact thing. So now when we log in, we're allowed to go to /home because we're saving a context and login is being set to true. And I might be wondering why I set login to null. Well, that's something I'll get to now. So first of all, you see how when we refresh the page, we're taken back to login screen? That's because our state is resetting. So every time the user navigates to our page, we want to send a request over to our backend with this cookie. And that way we can see if we're already logged in. So we don't have to even show this login page if the user's already logged in. So let's get let's get started on that now. So first of all, let's go over to our backend again. Over here. And in our login, let's make this a .route. So it's a /login route. And then this will be the post of /login. But if there's a GET request, we want to do something different. So this will also be an async function that takes in request or response. Like so. And so if they run a GET request, we just want to check if the user's actually logged in. So we'll do if request.session.user and request.session.username, then response.json logged in is true. And then what else were we sending? The username. Okay, username is request.session.user.username. Else we respond with logged in set to false, like so. Okay, so now when we refresh the page, let me actually print something out here. So logged in. So let me make sure I'm not printing out this thing every time. And there's an error here. Okay, what's going on here? Okay, .post says route.post requires a callback but got a string. Oh, I forgot to delete this. Okay. So let me log in. Or let me refresh, sorry. Okay, so now every time we refresh the page, we want to make a request to /login as a GET request. So let's go over here to our account context. And this is going to run every time we load our application because it's over here in our views thing. Not in our views thing, it's over here in our app.js here. So here we're going to want to run a use effect, and we're gonna have this the dependencies empty. And if you don't know how this works, basically it means that this is whatever we specify here is gonna run whatever this function is right here. Let me clean this up, I'm sorry. So this basically is like a function that runs whenever this array changes, and it runs automatically the first time this component mounts. So if you keep this array empty, it's never going to change, so it only runs when this component mounts, which would be when we first refresh the page. So let me import that. And in here is where I would want to run my logic. So I would want to send a fetch request over to http://localhost 4000, our backend, and include credentials, which means my cookies. We want to include that. And we do .then. Well, first of all, we want to do .catch in case our server's offline. We get an error. So in this case, we would want to set the user to logged in as false and return from that, and we .then with a response. So if there's if there's no response, or the response is not okay, or the response.status is greater than or equal to 400. So Basically, if something went wrong on the server, we want to do the same thing as we did here. And then .then with our data, and if there's some data, and what's going on here? Okay, I just had to wrap that in curly braces. So if there's data, we set the user to that destructured data. Like so, and if there's not data, so actually do it like this. If there's not data, I do the same thing that I did over here. And if there is data, then we set the user to the data, which is the response, which is what we send from our backend right here. So this right here. Okay, so now we're gonna send a request to /auth/login. It's gonna be a GET request, and if we get a response, we're gonna set that to the response, and if we're not logged in, we send back the response logged in is false. So now over here in our views.jsx, so I'm considering if we should either navigate the user to /home when they log in, or if we should just change this to /home if they're logged in. I think I'll just navigate them. So I'll just run navigate. So I'll just over here do const navigate equals use navigate from React router, and here I'll run navigate to /home. And there's probably a better way to do this, because it's giving me like a little yellow line here saying that I need to include it in the dependencies, but I've done this before, and if I include this in the dependencies, it'll be in an infinite loop because navigate changes on each render, so I don't want to do that. But now when we refresh the page, ooh, what's going on here? Let's try logging in. Okay. Here I want to console log not logged in, and here I want to do console log logged in, and here like that. So we're not logged in right now, and let me just console log the data that we're getting back. So we're not getting back any data. And that would be because here we're not returning response.json. That's why. Okay. So we are logged in. So we're getting to this point. Okay. Let me just console log the data that we're getting back. So we're getting back logged in is false. Okay. So let me go over here to our /login, and I'm gonna console log request.session.user, and that's undefined. That's super weird. We forgot to set the expires date. Okay, so basically I'm pretty sure the cookie's expiring right away. I had a feeling that I was forgetting something. So expires in the cookies options, expires we want to set that to, it's by milliseconds, so we want to do 1,000 times. So now we're at seconds. times 60, so now we're minutes, times 60, so now we're at hours, times 24, so now we're at days, and times 7, which is equal to 1 week. Okay, so right now we're not logged in, so let me try to log in now. Okay, so we're logged in, and when I refresh, oh, something's not right here. I mean, we're logged in our session still because I'm logging it over here in our .user. So when I print out .session.user, it's undefined. Let's log in again because I reset the Node.js application. Oh, because here I'm checking request.session.username and not request.session.user.username. So now when we log in, and we refresh, we stay logged in. As you can see here, we're printing out our login details on our front end. In this file right here, we're printing it out, and we can just get rid of that. And every time we refresh, we're taken to the home page. But if you notice, there's like a little flicker here. I don't know if you noticed, but you can see like a login button really quickly, and I want to get rid of that. And that's the reason I set this to null initially. So it's set to null until we communicate with the server, or we get back an error and the server is down. But if we communicate with the server and we're logged in, it goes from null to true, so it doesn't touch false. So that then we can go over here in our views, and we can just we can access our user like so, and then we can do user.logged in. If it's equals to null, then we render nothing. And if it's not, then we render all of these things here. And I gotta stick this in a React fragment thing. Or no, I'm messing it up here. We would render the routes. And I'll do that up here in the return. So return if user is logged in. If that's equals to null, then we render nothing. And if logged in is false or true, then we render the routes. So now we never see the login button, not even for a split moment. And if I go over here and set my network speed to very slow, so throttling to slow 3G, and I have to stay in that tab. As you can see, we see like a white screen, then this blank screen. And here we would potentially, instead of having an empty string, we could have like a loading screen. So I can put here, instead of that, I could have like text that says loading, right? And see, oops, I closed it again. So now when we refresh, it says loading, and then the server responds with our logged in information, and we log in. So there is one more thing that we're missing right here. When a user enters a wrong username or password, or maybe they try to create an account from which the username is not available, we're sending back this status, which is more like an error message, and we want to render that on the login page. So over here, let's just create a state. So it would be error set error. That would be equal to use state, like so, and we default it to null. And let's do the same thing over here. Like so. And so down here under our heading, we would want to render could just render text from Chalker UI. And then we would have to import that. Like so, and then down here, we could render it as a paragraph tag. And then the color will be red dot 500, and it could just be error. What did we call it? Error. Yeah, we just called it error. So just like that, and then the same thing for our login page. Right here under our heading. So we render the error if we have one, and I have to import it here too. So import text from Chalker UI. And so when we get a response over here, we do if data.status set error is equal to data.status, like so. And else if so we also want to do else if data.logged in. So if logged in is true, then we navigate them like so. So that's how we want to set this up. We want to set the user to the response, and if there's some type of status code, we set that to the error state, and if they're logged in, then we navigate them home. So let's do the same thing over here in our sign up component, just like that. So now let's try to log in with an account that doesn't exist. There we go. And now let's try to create an account that already exists. There we go.